People used to say we were the kind of couple that belonged on magazine covers. Friends envied our photographs. My parents bragged about him at family gatherings, and strangers smiled when we walked hand in hand down the street. I used to believe them, that we were flawless, enviable, untouchable. Mark, my husband, had that rare kind of charm that made people lean in when he spoke. He was tall, confident, endlessly articulate. In every room he commanded attention without raising his voice. At work he was admired. At home he was adored. And for years I convinced myself I had found the kind of love people only dream about. But dreams can sour, and perfection can be the most convincing disguise. I remember the first time I felt something wasn't right. It was small, barely noticeable, a shadow at the edge of comfort. Mark had kissed me goodnight, turned off the lamp, and drifted to sleep instantly. Yet I lay awake, heart pounding, because the silence of our house felt different, heavy, as if someone else was there. Watching, the feeling never really left me. Narration filled the space between my thoughts and his routines. His late nights at the office, the locked briefcase he never left unattended, the way he sometimes stood by the window too long, staring out into nothing. It all built up in fragments. But then he'd smile, slip his arms around me, whisper, "You're everything to me, Sarah," and the doubt melted away. Or maybe I forced it to, because that's what love does. It blinds. One evening, while setting the dinner table, I caught myself staring at him. He was scrolling through his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. The corners of his mouth tightened, but when he noticed me watching, his expression instantly softened. "What?" he asked, his voice light. "Nothing," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just lucky, I guess." He reached across the table, brushing my hand with his thumb. "You are lucky," he teased. "And so am I." The words should have warmed me, but instead they sat cold in my stomach. There were moments when he looked at me like I was his entire world. And then there were moments when I caught a flicker of something else, something hidden, dangerous, like a storm behind glass. Late at night, lying in bed, I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe marriage just changed over time. People grew distant. People carried stress. That's what I told myself. Yet I couldn't explain the way my breath caught whenever I walked into a room and found him already there, silent, watching. The house, once a sanctuary, began to feel like a stage. Every smile rehearsed, every kiss performed for an invisible audience. And though I didn't know it yet, the cracks in our perfect marriage were widening, ready to split open, because the truth has a way of seeping in even through locked doors. And soon, I would discover what Mark had been keeping behind those eyes of his. The unease I'd felt in our home never disappeared. It only grew stronger. At first it was subtle, like a whisper I could almost ignore. But soon the signs multiplied, stacking against the fragile comfort I tried to build around myself. Mark began coming home later than usual. Sometimes it was an hour, sometimes 3. He'd offer explanations, late meetings, client dinners, traffic. But his voice carried the flatness of repetition, as if he'd rehearsed the excuses in his head. He smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, not the one sitting untouched on our bathroom shelf. And then there was his phone. It was always near him. Screen tilted downward, locked tighter than a vault. He guarded it with a care he had never shown before. Once, when I accidentally reached for it, intending only to move it so I could set down his coffee, his hand shot out so fast it startled me. "Don't," he said firmly. I froze, blinking at him. "I'll take it," he interrupted, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He slid the phone into his pocket and patted my arm. "Don't worry so much." But I did. Still, I convinced myself it was work, stress, pressure. Men in his position carried burdens their wives couldn't always understand. That's what I repeated in my head over and over, until the words lost meaning, because the truth was simpler, sharper. I didn't want to know. One afternoon, while walking back from the grocery store, I bumped into our neighbor, Mrs. Klein. She was a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. The kind of neighbor who noticed everything. "You know," she said casually, lowering her voice as though sharing gossip, "I thought I saw Mark downtown last week. Near that old bar on 7th, I smiled politely. "Oh, maybe he had a client meeting." She tilted her head. He wasn't dressed like it. Looked casual, and he wasn't alone. The bag of groceries suddenly felt heavier in my hands. I forced a laugh. You must have been mistaken. Maybe, she said, though her eyes told me she didn't believe it. I walked home in silence, every step echoing louder than the last. That night, when Mark finally came through the door, tie loose, hair disheveled, he kissed my forehead and muttered, "Long day." I studied his face in the dim light. His eyes met mine only briefly before darting away, shadowed, unreadable. That was when I realized it. He wasn't just hiding his phone. He was hiding himself. Lying next to him in bed, I stared at the ceiling while his steady breathing filled the room. The house was dark, but I could still see his face in my mind. The flicker in his eyes, the guarded way he looked at me like he was already somewhere else. The cracks were no longer invisible. They were there, etched between us, waiting to split open, and I had only begun to uncover what he was keeping locked away. After Mrs. Klein's remark, my mind refused to rest. Every time Mark left the house, my imagination trailed him like a shadow. Where was he going? Who was he with? What secrets flickered behind his eyes? The answers seemed buried in silence, and silence has a way of driving people mad. One rainy afternoon, when Mark claimed he'd be at a late strategy meeting, I found myself pacing outside his office door. I told myself I was only tidying, only curious, but the truth was more dangerous. I wanted proof. Proof of what I didn't yet know. His office always smelled faintly of cedar and ink, a place I rarely lingered. The desk was neatly arranged, every pen aligned, every folder stacked. But when I opened the lower cabinet, my breath caught. A drawer, thicker than the others, was locked. The key wasn't on his usual ring. That detail alone set my pulse racing. Why would he lock only one drawer? I knelt, tugging at the handle as though persistence might force it open. Finally, after rummaging through the shelves, I found a small brass key tucked inside an old book. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The drawer creaked open. Inside were files, photographs, scraps of paper. At first, they seemed mundane. Receipts, business cards, newspaper clippings. But the deeper I sifted, the less sense they made. One photo showed a woman I didn't recognize smiling at a cafe. Another folder contained notes scribbled in hurried handwriting, dates and places underlined, names I didn't know. The air in the room felt colder. I tried to connect the pieces, but the puzzle was too fragmented. What unsettled me most wasn't what I understood. It was what I didn't. Why would Mark keep photographs of strangers? Why lock them away as if they were evidence of something unspeakable? My chest tightened as guilt began pressing in. He would be furious if he knew I'd seen this. For a moment, I considered taking one photo, something tangible to prove I wasn't imagining things. But fear stopped me. Fear that if I removed even a fragment, he would notice. Quickly, I placed everything back as I had found it, relocked the drawer, and returned the key to its hiding place. My reflection in the office window startled me. Eyes wide, face pale, lips trembling. That night, Mark slipped into bed beside me. His arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me close, almost too close. His breath warmed the back of my neck, steady, calm. But his grip, firm, unyielding, felt like more than affection. "Long day?" I whispered, forcing my voice steady. He chuckled softly, though it sounded rehearsed. "Always." His embrace lingered, pressing me into him as if daring me to move, daring me to speak. In that moment, I wondered, did he know? Had he sensed my intrusion, smelled my fear, read the guilt written across my face? I lay awake long after he drifted into sleep, my body rigid, my mind racing. The drawer had given me fragments, not answers. But one thing was certain. Whatever Mark was hiding, it was darker than I was ready to admit, and soon denial would no longer protect me. The night after I found the drawer, I couldn't hold the silence any longer. My chest ached with questions I couldn't bury. And when Mark walked into the kitchen the next evening, loosening his tie, I decided to speak. "Mark," I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to steady it. "I need to ask you something." He looked up from pouring himself a drink. "What's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "You've been distant. You come home late, your phone's always locked, and—" My voice faltered, but I forced myself to continue. "I went into your office yesterday. I saw the drawer. For a heartbeat, the air seemed to freeze. His hand paused mid-motion, glass hovering near his lips. Then slowly he set it down and leaned against the counter, expression unreadable. "You went through my office?" His tone was soft, calm, too calm. "I had to," I blurted. "There are pictures, papers, things you never told me about." "What are you hiding?" He exhaled, shaking his head as though disappointed. "Sarah, do you hear yourself? Do you realize how paranoid you sound right now?" My mouth opened, then closed. "Paranoid? I'm telling you what I saw." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What you think you saw. You've always had this imagination. You twist things. That's what's happening here." I felt my face burn. "I know what I saw." "No," he said firmly. His eyes locked onto mine with unsettling intensity. "You know what you wanted to see. You're mistrusting me, twisting innocent things into monsters in your head. That's not love, Sarah, that's sabotage." The words sliced deeper than I expected. My confidence faltered, and suddenly I questioned myself. Was I sabotaging us? Had I gone too far, letting suspicion cloud my mind? He reached out, cupping my chin with surprising tenderness. "You think I don't notice how you've been watching me? Waiting for me to slip? You want to ruin what we've built because of your insecurities." His thumb traced my jaw. "I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Tears stung my eyes. "I just want the truth." "The truth," he said, his smile thin, sharp, "is that you're imagining problems where there aren't any. You're sick with doubt, and if you keep feeding it, Sarah, you'll destroy us." "Not me, you." His calmness unsettled me more than anger ever could. He didn't yell. He didn't slam his fists. He simply stood there, steady, controlled, as if he knew exactly how to dismantle me. By the time he kissed my forehead and walked past me, leaving me trembling in the kitchen, doubt gnawed at my certainty. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had made too much of what I saw. Maybe the drawer, the photos, the bloodstains in my memory of that kitchen floor, they were nothing but a chain of coincidences stitched together by fear. But in the pit of my stomach, the fear remained, because cracks don't vanish when you deny them. They spread, and soon one would shatter everything. After Mark accused me of paranoia, I tried to silence the questions clawing at my mind. But denial is fragile. It only takes the faintest whisper to shatter it. The whispers came from places I didn't expect. A hushed conversation at the grocery store. Laughter behind closed doors. A colleague's offhand comment about seeing Mark with someone. They never gave me details. But the suggestion alone was enough to poison my thoughts. I began watching him differently. Not just the late arrivals or the locked phone, but the small inconsistencies. The faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine. The way he sometimes checked his reflection in the car window before coming inside. The pauses before answering simple questions. One night, while folding his shirts, I found a hotel receipt tucked into his jacket pocket. The name of the hotel made my stomach twist. It was nowhere near his office. Nowhere near anything resembling work. I held the paper in my hand until it crumpled. Heat rising in my chest. When I confronted him, my voice trembled. "Mark, who were you with at the Grandview Hotel?" His eyes flicked to the receipt in my hand, then back to me. His expression didn't change. "You're unbelievable," he said flatly. "Answer me." "There's nothing to answer." "The client dinner, that's all." "At a hotel?" His voice sharpened. "Do you hear yourself? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? You're turning into a jealous, suspicious wife who sees ghosts in every shadow. But you found what you wanted to find." He cut me off. "You dig through my things, you twist stories in your head, and now you accuse me of something vile. Do you think this is love, Sarah? Do you think I deserve this?" The coldness in his tone drained the strength from my body. For a moment I almost believed him. Almost. But the receipt still burned in my palm. A fragile piece of truth he refused to acknowledge. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at my vanity, staring at my reflection in the dim glow of the lamp. My face looked foreign, haunted, tired, hollowed by doubt. I pulled open the drawer, took out a notebook, and began to write. Every detail. Every receipt. Every excuse. Every whisper of perfume. The diary became my lifeline. A place where his voice couldn't twist my reality. A place where I could see, in ink, the truth of what I experienced. If I didn't write it down, I feared I'd lose myself completely to his manipulations. I wrote until my hand cramped, until my tears blurred the words on the page. Only then did I close the book, slide it beneath my clothes in the drawer, and whisper to myself, "You're not insane." You're not insane, but deep down, I knew the diary was more than just memory. It was evidence, because whatever Mark was hiding, it was growing darker. And soon the proof wouldn't just be whispers or receipts. It would be blood. The house was unnervingly quiet when I stepped inside. The smell of garlic and seared meat lingered faintly in the air, but the kitchen lights were off, as if he hadn't quite finished what he started. My heels clicked softly against the hardwood until they stopped at the sight that froze me in place, a smear of red, faint but unmistakable, streaking across the floor just beside the kitchen sink. "Blood," I whispered under my breath. My stomach twisting, my pulse quickened. It wasn't just a drop. It was a drag mark, like something or someone had been moved. I crouched, staring at it, until I heard his footsteps behind me. "Hey," his voice came, steady but sharp. "What are you doing down there?" I turned, forcing a smile. I just saw this. "Did you hurt yourself?" His eyes followed mine to the streak of crimson. For the briefest second, his jaw clenched, his face betraying something raw, before he shrugged it off with disarming ease. He lifted his hand, showing me a shallow cut near his thumb. "Cooking accident," he said simply, holding it up like evidence. "Slipped with the knife. You'd think after all these years I'd know how to chop an onion without losing skin." The explanation was clean, almost too clean. My gaze flicked between the tiny cut on his thumb and the length of blood on the floor. They didn't match. The mark was too heavy to come from that wound. But I forced a laugh, even as my chest tightened. "Clumsy you," I murmured, standing up. His eyes lingered on me, longer than they should have. There was no warmth in his smile. It was almost as if he knew I didn't believe him, as if the game had shifted into a higher gear. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the smear, the way his hand had trembled when he first noticed me staring at it. My mind raced back to the hidden drawer, the photographs. One in particular, a woman with auburn hair, her face soft but her eyes distant, captured in candid, eerie detail, the very same woman whose name now scrolled across the news ticker as missing. I clutched the bedsheet tighter around me as he slid into bed, his arm heavy across my waist. His voice was low, husky, almost affectionate as he whispered, "You worry too much." But I wasn't imagining anymore. My body knew. My instincts screamed. Something was horribly wrong. I wanted to run, but where would I go? Every corner of my life had his fingerprints. Every friend, every shared account, every routine. If I slipped up, if he caught even the faintest whiff of betrayal, I wasn't sure what he would do. Still, in the hollow dark of that night, I promised myself one thing. I would find the truth. Even if it destroyed me. And as the morning light bled into the room, he kissed my forehead with an almost tender smile. "Big day today," he said. "We'll need to talk." The way he said it chilled me more than the blood ever could. Morning came heavy, pressing against my skin like a weight I couldn't shake. His words from the night before still echoed. "Big day today. We'll need to talk." But he left early, disappearing before breakfast, leaving only the faint trace of his cologne in the hallway. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the faint stain on the floor that no amount of scrubbing seemed to erase, when a firm knock rattled the front door. My heart jolted. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a dark suit, his expression stern, a badge glinting at his belt. I opened the door halfway. "Yes, Mrs. Whitman?" His voice was steady, polite, but edged with authority. "Detective Harris. May I come in for a moment?" Every instinct screamed to slam the door shut, but I stepped aside, forcing my lips into a thin smile. Of course. He walked in, scanning the room with eyes that missed nothing. He didn't sit, just stood there, studying me. "I won't take much of your time. I just have a few questions about your husband, Daniel." My throat tightened. "My husband?" "Yes." He flipped open a small notepad. "Where was he last Tuesday night?" "Around 9 p.m.? The question hit like a slap. Images flashed. Daniel saying he had a late meeting. His shirt wrinkled when he returned, his knuckles raw. I forced myself to breathe evenly. I think he was at the office. Working late. Detective Harris scribbled something. His eyes lifted, piercing. "And the Friday before that?" I hesitated. I remembered the way Daniel had come home unusually late, smelling faintly of smoke. His jaw clenched. But I smiled weakly, probably the same. He works long hours. The detective's gaze didn't waver. We're investigating a series of disappearances. Women, all last seen within a few miles of his office. A chill swept through me, colder than any winter wind. Disappearances? I whispered. Yes, Harris said carefully, watching my reaction. You've lived with him for years. Have you noticed anything unusual? Unusual. My mind screamed with locked drawers, missing women's faces, blood on the floor. But my lips said, no, nothing unusual. He's a good man. The detective studied me, as if weighing truth against fear. If you think of anything at all, here's my card. He slid it across the table. Sometimes the smallest detail matters most. I nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline, though it burned in my hand. When he finally left, I sank into a chair, shaking. My marriage wasn't a partnership anymore. It was a prison cell with invisible bars. I couldn't tell if Harris believed me or saw straight through my lies. As I sat in the silence, I heard the front door creak again. My husband stepped inside, eyes locking on mine, lingering too long on the detective's card that I hadn't hidden fast enough. His smile was razor thin. Who was at the door? He asked softly. The cage door slammed shut. His question, who was at the door, still lingered in the air like smoke. I had lied, saying it was just a delivery mix-up. He narrowed his eyes but didn't press, instead retreating into his study with a silence more dangerous than words. That silence gnawed at me long after he shut the door. I needed answers. Real ones. The detective's card burned in my pocket, daring me to dig deeper. That night, when Daniel finally fell asleep, I slipped into the guest room with my laptop, my hands trembling as I typed his full name into search archives. Most results were clean. Professional achievements, charity events, a man admired. But buried deeper, behind paywalls and forgotten databases, I uncovered something different. An old article from another state. Local man questioned in violent assault case. Charges dropped. The photo was unmistakable. A younger Daniel. Hair shorter, eyes colder, standing outside a courthouse. My breath caught. The article was vague. No conviction, no details beyond a fight that left a woman hospitalized. But the dates, the place. It was him. I dug further. Another clipping. Another headline. Sealed records surround high-profile assault. The words clawed at me, sealed, hidden. Buried just like the man I thought I knew. I leaned back, shaking. All those times I'd replayed our wedding vows, our anniversary trips, his gentle touch, they all turned sour. Every memory dripped with poison, tainted by the truth I had never been told. In the reflection of the darkened screen, I saw myself pale, eyes wide, lips trembling. How long had I been sleeping beside a stranger? A noise startled me. The floor creaked in the hallway. I snapped the laptop shut, heart racing, and slid it under a blanket just as Daniel appeared in the doorway. His silhouette was tall, unmoving. What are you doing awake? His voice was calm, but calm in him was always more dangerous than anger. I forced a weak smile. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd read for a bit. His gaze lingered, scanning me as if trying to peel away the lie. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. Come back to bed. It's late. When he left, I sat frozen, listening to his footsteps fade. My pulse thundered. The evidence was clear now. The man who tucked me into bed, who kissed my forehead, who the world believed was perfect, had once been accused of hurting another woman badly enough to make headlines. And if he had done it once, what was stopping him from doing it again? I pulled the laptop back out, opening the detective's card with trembling fingers. My thumb hovered over the number, desperate to call, yet paralyzed by the thought of Daniel finding out. Instead, I opened a blank page on the computer and began typing. I poured everything out, every suspicion, every memory, every detail the world didn't see. If something happened to me, there would be proof. As dawn crept through the blinds, I realized something terrifying. The man in my bed wasn't my husband anymore. He was evidence, and evidence has a way of being destroyed. The truth sat heavy in my chest, pressing down until it felt impossible to breathe. His past was no longer rumor or suspicion. It was fact. inked in headlines and buried in sealed records. For days I carried the knowledge like a blade tucked beneath my skin, sharp and dangerous. But the night came when I could no longer keep it hidden. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel was in his study, the door cracked open, his silhouette lit by the glow of a desk lamp. I clutched the folder I had pieced together, printouts of the articles, the missing woman's photo, even a copy of the blood-stained towel I had secretly photographed before he destroyed it. My hands shook as I stepped inside. "We need to talk." He looked up slowly, his eyes narrowing, the faintest smile touching his lips. "About what?" I dropped the folder on his desk. The papers spilled across the wood like spilled secrets. "About this. About who you really are." For a moment, silence. Then he leaned back, studying me, his calmness more terrifying than rage. "You've been busy," he said softly. "Stop lying to me," I whispered, my voice breaking. "The women, the blood, the late nights." "Daniel, I know." His expression shifted. The mask cracked. His smile vanished, replaced with something colder, rawer. "And what is it you think you know?" "That you hurt them. That you've been hiding this from me. That everything, our marriage, our love, was a performance." My words trembled, but they spilled out anyway. He stood towering over me now, his voice dropping to a chilling calm. "You don't understand. They weren't like you. They didn't listen. They pushed. They deserved what they got." My breath caught. "Oh my God." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard enough to make me cry out. "But you could have stayed perfect. Why couldn't you just stay blind?" The papers crumpled under his fist as he slammed them to the floor. The room seemed to close in, walls tightening like a vice. I could feel his rage vibrating through the air, the monster no longer hidden. Summoning every shred of strength, I yanked my arm free and shoved him back. For a moment, his shock froze him, giving me the sliver of time I needed. I ran. The hallway blurred as I sprinted, his footsteps thundering behind me. He roared my name, the sound shaking the walls. My hands fumbled with the front door lock, slick with sweat, heart hammering in my ears. The door gave way, and I burst into the night, the cold air slicing across my face. Behind me, Daniel's shadow loomed in the doorway, his voice low and venomous. "You can run," he hissed, "but you'll never escape me." I didn't look back. I ran barefoot into the darkness, the folder clutched to my chest like a shield. The life I once thought was mine was gone, burned away in one final confrontation. This was no longer about marriage, no longer about love, it was about survival. The night air was sharp against my skin as I stumbled down the empty street, my breath ragged, legs aching. Behind me, Daniel's shadow dissolved into the darkness, but his voice still echoed in my skull. "You'll never escape me." By dawn, I was sitting in the sterile brightness of a police station. Detective Harris's steady gaze fixed on me as I slid the folder of evidence across the table. My voice trembled. "It's all here. The photos. The stains. It's past." He flipped through the pages, expression unreadable, though his jaw tightened. "This is enough to open a case." But he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "It will also put you at the center. The press will tear into every part of your life. Are you ready for that?" The words struck harder than I expected. Me, the center of it all. Not him, not the monster I had married, but me. My name would be dragged through headlines, my wedding photos replayed, my smile dissected as the world asked how I hadn't seen it sooner. I rubbed my arms, shivering though the room was warm. "I don't want the world to know me as his wife. I don't want to be." Harris's eyes softened, but only slightly. "I won't lie to you. Many women in your position choose silence. They disappear, start fresh somewhere else. But if you stay silent, he walks free. And more women disappear." The room closed in around me. Silence meant safety, but at what cost? Speaking meant justice, but also betrayal. Betrayal of the vows I had once believed in. Betrayal of the illusion I had clung to, even when the cracks began to show. I pressed my palms against the cool metal table. My voice shook. "I loved him once. Do you understand that? Everything I believed about my life, it will all die in that courtroom." Harris didn't flinch. Sometimes truth feels like death before it feels like freedom. Tears blurred my vision. Images swirled. Our first kiss, our wedding, the blood on the floor. his hand crushing my wrist, his confession whispered in the shadows. My marriage had already died. The only choice left was whether others would die too. Finally, I nodded. "I'll testify." The detective exhaled as though he had been holding his breath. "We'll arrange protection. He won't touch you again." But even as he said it, I felt Daniel's presence lingering like smoke, seeping into my lungs. No locked door, no security guard could erase the fact that he knew me. My habits, my fears, my weaknesses. As I signed the official papers, committing myself to the path of justice, guilt gnawed at me. Guilt for the love I once felt. Guilt for the silence I had kept. Guilt for the fact that part of me still wanted the man I thought I had married. When I left the station, the sky was gray, rain threatening to fall. I pulled my coat tighter and whispered to myself, justice or betrayal, maybe they're the same thing. And as the first raindrops hit my skin, I realized the storm was only just beginning. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale air, a place where truth and performance shared the same stage. I sat stiffly in the witness box, the eyes of strangers drilling into me. Cameras weren't allowed, but I could feel the invisible lens of the world focusing on me, ready to dissect every tremble in my voice. And then there was him. Daniel. My husband. His suit was pressed, his tie straight, but his eyes, those same eyes I once lost myself in, glared at me like sharpened blades. He looked calm, collected, even charming, as though this was all just another business deal he expected to win. The prosecutor's voice cut through the air. "Mrs. Whitman, can you tell the court what you discovered on the night in question?" I swallowed, hands clenching against each other. My words came halting at first, but once I began, they poured like a confession I had carried too long. The blood by the sink, the locked drawer, the photos of women who never came home. Every detail felt like ripping open a wound, exposing flesh still raw. Daniel's lawyer objected again and again. Speculative, irrelevant. But the judge allowed most of it. Perhaps even he sensed the weight of what I carried. Then came the moment I feared most, cross-examination. Daniel's attorney circled me like a hawk, questions sharp and deliberate. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Whitman, that you stayed with your husband for years without complaint? That you traveled with him, celebrated anniversaries, told friends how perfect your marriage was?" My voice broke. "Yes, I believed the lies because I wanted to, because he made me doubt myself." Whispers rippled through the room. The lawyer smirked, but I didn't look at him. I looked only at Daniel. For the first time, his mask slipped, just slightly, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, a flash of fury in his eyes. He hated that I was speaking. He hated that the truth was no longer his to control. When it was over, I stepped down from the stand on unsteady legs. My testimony had been given. Now, justice, or betrayal, rested in the hands of 12 strangers. The days blurred together. Arguments, witnesses, evidence presented piece by piece until the puzzle no longer looked like a husband. It looked like a predator. Still, doubt gnawed at me. What if the jury saw him the way I once had? Charming, convincing, perfect. But when the verdict came, it rang clear. Guilty. The courtroom erupted in noise, gasps, whispers, the shuffle of reporters rushing to phones. I sat frozen, staring at the man I once called my world. Daniel didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, but otherwise he remained the calm center of the storm, as if even prison could not unravel his control. He was led away in handcuffs, the clink of metal echoing through the room like a final brutal vow. For a moment I thought he might glance back at me, offer one last smirk, one last threat. He didn't, and that silence cut deeper than words. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, questions hurled like stones. How long did you know? Did you help him? How does it feel to testify against your own husband? I kept walking. I owed the world no answers. At home, in the quiet, I stared at my wedding ring on the dresser. Once it had been a symbol of love, of forever. Now I saw it for what it really was. Evidence. Evidence that I had lived beside a man capable of horrors no screenwriter could dream, no director could stage. And I understood finally why no movie could tell this story. Because movies end when the monster is caught. Real life doesn't, the echoes linger. The shadows remain. I touched the ring one last time and whispered, "The ring on my finger was never a symbol of love. It was evidence of a crime."